fans, we are back with another edition of Unfinished Business. Whoop, 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 deep dive. This week, first, let me introduce myself. Hi, I am Jeff Galashaw, your host. And with me, as always, is Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Play ball.
And with that, this week, we are going to be tackling a 1996 dramatic thriller by the name of The Fan. It is directed by Tony Scott and written by Fionn Sutton, based on the book by Peter Abrams. And in the cast, we have Robert De Niro, Wesley Snipes, Benicio Del Toro, Ellen Barkin, John Leguizamo, Patty d'Arbanville, and Chris Mulkey. This is not my pick this week. This is Andre's pick. Andre, talk about The Fan.
So the first time I saw The Fan was 1996. I think it just came out on home video. I was a huge Wesley Snipes fan. I had a very good appreciation for Robert De Niro. And, Tony Scott, I didn't know all the films that he did. I didn't know he was the same guy that did Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop 2. But nonetheless, I wanted to see this movie because the trailers always made it look exciting. And it's got its good and it's got its bad. It's kind of like, somewhere in the middle. So basically you have Robert De Niro playing Gil Renard, who's a knife salesman, and he's a huge baseball fan. He's particularly a fan of the San Francisco Giants player, Bobby Rayburn, who just signed a $40 million deal with the team. And Rayburn is kind of going through a slump where the fans are turning on him, and he's got a kind of has like an attitude. He doesn't really care much. And then you have Benicio Del Toro being the other player who's like the up and coming star that everybody likes, that's giving the team all the big wins. And so with De Niro, he obviously doesn't like Del Toro's character. He's madly in love and obsessed with Wesley Snipes' role. And he's also a guy that has, a restrained relationship with his ex-wife. They share custody of their son. And things kind of come to a head where he takes his son to the ball game while trying to make this big knife sale and leaves his son at the game, tries to make the sale, but the guy that he was supposed to make the sale with isn't there. He went out to the ball game. So now he loses on his job. His kid gets taken home to the ex-wife, and the ex-wife now puts a full restraining order on him. So he goes completely nuts, right? And he takes it out on Del Toro because he thinks he's fucking up the game or whatever else. He ends up killing him in the bathroom just so, Wesley could get his number back and, will get him out of the slump. But because De Niro's so crazy and doesn't feel like he's being appreciated enough, he decides he's going to pretend to be the savior of Wesley's kid when he goes out trying to save his dog in the beach and nearly drowns. He goes and saves him. So now Wesley's like thankful and, lets him into the house and buddies up with him, only to really realize, this guy is kind of off his rocker and he kidnaps his kid. And then you get into the third act, which is, pretty much he's got to win this game or else he's going to kill his kid. This movie was something that Tony Scott initially didn't want to do, but then when he heard De Niro was doing it, he said, okay, I want to make this movie. And originally they were looking at a number of different actors, like Al Pacino was considered. When Wesley was offered, he wanted to play the part. They even offered Wesley's part to Brad Pitt, but everybody wanted to play the De Niro character. And this obviously wasn't the first time De Niro played a stalker. He did this in the King of Comedy, but this time it's more to the extreme and, baseball instead of a late night show that he's obsessed with. So he is the standout no matter what. He is just insane. He is all over the place. He's got his obsession with his knives and, all kinds of crazy shit that he does there. And Wesley is pretty much almost like playing off his personality, being this cocky baseball player who doesn't give a shit about his fans or the fact that, hey, you're getting $40 million. So I don't care if I win or lose, but I don't like that my ego's being bruised here. So there's a little bit of commentary there, but, it's also one of those movies that I guess performance-wise, it's great, but it's not really thrilling enough. It just tries too much to really be a template for Enemy of the State, because Tony Scott was using a lot of his camera techniques and editing skills that he was changing up at that time to prepare for that movie. And this was just sort of like, well, you want to do it only because De Niro's in it. So that's The Fan in a nutshell. It's kind of it had the potential to really be really strong, and it kind of falls flat in my view. It might be
I
Tony
agree.
Scott's worst movie.
Oh no, I do not agree with that. There, that's a little movie called Spygate. Um, that's another movie for another show. Um, I'm not gonna say it's his worst movie. I think it's disappointing considering all the talent
Yeah.
involved. I think obviously Robert De Niro has the best role. No offense, Wesley Snipes just comes across as a whiner throughout the movie. Benicio Del Toro barely speaks, so it's like he's there and then he's gone. His physical presence, he's there. Ellen Barkin only seems here to have another star name in the movie.
Yeah, her character just really didn't have a point other than to just give grief to Snipes.
Exactly. If the movie was made now, Kyra Sedgwick would probably play her.
Yeah.
And I know Eddie Murphy was once attached for the Wesley Snipes role, but he had to drop out. Here's the thing with this movie. Like you said, okay, I'm going to go into my personal take with it. I remember when New York used to have a thing called movies a day, more movies in a day, where they used to have like a kind of a movie themed street fair in Manhattan. And I remember the first year I went, this was the big movie that was coming out in the fall. And I mean, I had a mini poster of it. Every stand you went to seemed like, hey, are you ready for The Fan? You know, I was given a free premiere magazine when that was out with that as the cover story. So I was really looking forward to it. But something told me not to go see it in theaters. So when I saw it on home video, I was like, thank God I didn't see it because no offense, Robert De Niro has the best role, but again, we've seen him do it better.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, okay, so he's just doing this again. It's almost like, even though it's nowhere near connected, it's like taking place in a sequel where it's like, oh, I've already seen you do this. It would have been better for somebody against type to play this role. But what I really thought was the original angle to this film was that you have an obsession that is not played as homoerotic because it's between two men, and also there's no sexual like interest between either one. It's more of a hero worship, and eventually ties into relationships between fathers and sons, especially with Robert De Niro's character being much older than Wesley Snipes, but watching his career come up and being proud like he is a parent. So, I thought that was an interesting take, but obviously the film doesn't really play heavily into it. And of all the things Robert De Niro's character could have sold, knives, really? It's like a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and obviously a knife is going to come into play later. And I mean, it's sad and a little commentary on, the death of the door-to-door salesman, maybe. But I was just like, okay, I guess this works. But even at that age, I was like, a little heavy-handed, aren't we? But like you said, I really like this film. I mean, I wish they could have thought of a different title because there is a movie called The Fan from 1981.
Yes, from Michael Biehn.
Exactly. So it's like, and that is like maybe a little more on the nose because it's a whole sexual thing too. And also there's the German film Der Fan, which is about a teenage girl who is obsessed with a rock star, has a one night stand with him, kills him, and then eats him. Spoiler alert. So obviously, this film is nowhere near like any of those films. This is more the studio, The Fan. I didn't hate it as much as you apparently to call it Tony Scott's worst film. I mean, I don't even like what's its face that much. I don't even like The Hunger that much, and I still wouldn't call this his worst.
But The Hunger was artistic.
Yeah, that's what you want to call it. It's okay. I only like it that David Bowie's in it. That's the only reason I really like.
And Catherine Deneuve.
Catherine Deneuve and Susan Sarandon. And
Yeah, we don't talk about Susan Sarandon.
okay, but I mean, let me put it this way: this is still better than the Fanatic with John Travolta.
Yeah, I agree
You
with that.
this is better than, but I mean, he's always going to be remembered for King of Comedy. This is not going to be a threatening
Right.
role. Like, oh, choose between these two. I'm like, yeah, King of Comedy. No, no problem. But like I said, it's sort of like Snake Eyes. This is a movie where going into it, you thought it was going to be so much better than it was. And then when you see it, it's just like, well, it was a movie, maybe a good time waster, but you didn't need all these big names if this was going to be the end result, you know? Because, you're also kind of hoping for, even though, Robert De Niro's in his 50s at this point, you kind of wanted to see a fight scene between Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro.
Well,
That
I
never
didn't
happened.
expect that, even with Wesley
I
kicking
wanted
ass.
I wanted Wesley to do some moves and Robert De Niro, and it never happened.
He couldn't really
And
throw a punch at Del Toro. Like he got his ass kicked.
oh, that's true. I mean, well, they were baseball players. They're not known for fist fighting. Maybe if this was hockey or maybe even basketball, there would have been some sharp elbows. But the other thing, I guess I have a problem. Well, not really a problem with, is the film tries so hard to make Robert De Niro the villain, but also sympathetic.
Yeah.
I don't know which would have worked better. I kind of like the more villainous role, if they would have went that route. Because again, when you look at the box art or poster, that's the way it looks. It doesn't look like, oh, we're going to tell you his backstory.
Well, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I picked this movie, was because, like Sleeping with the Enemy and Unlawful Entry, it's one of those movies where, again, I never read the book, but it had me curious about his backstory, and just the fact that, as a character, he was somebody who, you see the baseball paraphernalia in his trailer, and you could tell, like, there was some kind of thing with his dad, because the dad owned the knife business that he worked at. So it was like, kind of, you may have wondered, was he like molested as a kid? Did the father abandon him, and he just like saw himself through Snipes being like this upstanding dad and baseball player? I don't know, but there's certainly a reason why the guy is just freaking nuts and can't hold down a marriage or even be a good parent, because the guy just seems to be obsessed with the game itself. Like, that's his escape.
Yeah, because I mean, again, he's even willing to abandon his kid a little too easily just for things, even though it shows that they kind of have a caring relationship.
Yeah.
He just makes the wrong decisions time after time. So, I mean, just like you have John Leguizamo in here in like more of a thankless role as Wesley Snipes' agent. It was like, okay, I mean, he wasn't the John Leguizamo at the time, but he had heat. And it's like, you're kind of wasted in this movie.
Well, I think he's just a
And
comic relief.
yeah, but the film just felt like there's just so much testosterone watching this movie. Like, and it never really gets released because again, it's always like it's building, it's building. Oh, don't lose this game. And, oh, I gotta run and try and save my son. And then, okay, let's go kill De Niro. But not me. Let the cops do it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, so there's no release. It's like, so there's all this huffing and puffing, but there's no grand release. So that's why I think ultimately also the film might feel a little more frustrating by the end. And
There's not really much of a conclusion either, because even after he saves his kid, it's like, okay, what's going to happen to this guy? Is he going to go through a change? Like, I don't feel like he changed by the end of the movie. He's just going to go back, play baseball, and be an asshole. It's just more about the tragedy of, oh, De Niro dies and they find all his shit. Like, what was the point of all this? The father and son dynamic? I don't know. What's going to happen to his son? He's going to probably be traumatized over this.
well, that is why everybody wanted to play the De Niro role because, like, I got a tragedy over here, and Wesley Snipes, like, okay, I'm just like the star he's obsessed with
Yeah.
currently, So I mean, maybe if it wasn't such, I guess such had to be put into production. Apparently, maybe they could have worked on, giving his character at least a little bit more dimension, So So really, it's great for Robert De Niro, but it fails everybody else around them.
Yeah.
Except for Tony Scott, who was like, "Hey, I'm just doing this till Enemy of the State, and then I'm going to use all the same shit." And but strangely enough, the way it's filmed, even though there's a lot of wild camera work, it kind of reminds me of Last Boy Scout as far as lighting. Because
Yes.
there's a lot of dark scenes and shadows in this movie for no reason. And I guess just to emphasize, hey, look at how creepy De Niro is. But I'm just like, but that's visually the movie it more reminds me of than Enemy of the State. So,
Mhm.
would you recommend the film?
Um, I'm gonna say yeah. I don't. It's not terrible, but again, it's a time waster. But I think in terms of the style and De Niro's performance, it's entertaining.
I would recommend it. Just have some reservations. Like, it's not gonna be great,
Yeah.
But if you're looking for something like really macho sports related, you might want to check this out. And again, De Niro's good in it, but we've seen him be better. So it's like, other than that minor quibble, like, look at the cast list, but calm down. It isn't going to be as great as you think.
And we've seen
Uh,
Wesley play a better ball player in Major League One.
True. Less whiner, and more of a story arc too.
Yeah.
But like I said, eh, it's like Snake Eyes. It's very disappointing. Not as bad as Snake Eyes, but ultimately, in the end, it's disappointing. But I would say somebody should see it if they're a fan of De Niro. And do you have anything else to say about it since it was your pick? And
No, that's pretty much everything.
okay, so that is The Fan, our deep dive into 1996's action, well, not really action, dramatic thriller, The Fan, directed by Tony Scott. Please let us know if you agree, disagree, comment. Did you what things you liked about the film that we might have missed, or things about the film you hated that we might have missed or agree upon. But that ends our business for this episode. But as you know, there's always more unfinished business to be had. So I have to ask you, have have you seen King of New York? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what film would you recommend?
Have you seen True Romance? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
And that is it for this episode.